Hello everyone, my name is Lorena Valley. I'm a certified veterinary technician, and today I'm going to be presenting my student brief. My student brief today is about a federal law case. This class is ATE 3515, and this is for legal and ethical issues in veterinary medicine. My case title is the Animal Legal Defense Fund versus Waston. However, there are multiple other factors that are incorporated into this case. For example, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals Corporation is in this case as well, the American Civil Liberties Union of Idaho, Center for Food and Safety, Farm Sanctuary, Rivers Wish Animal Sanctuary, Western Watersheds Project, Sandpoint Vegetarians, Idaho Concerned Area Residents for the Environment, Idaho Hispanic Caucus Institute for Research and Education, Counterpunch, Farm Forward, Will Potter, James McWilliams, Monta Hickman, Blair Cox, Daniel Hoff, plaintiffs, appellees, and the Attorney General of Idaho and the defendant. To first understand this case, we must understand what federal law is. Federal law applies to everyone in the country, in this case, the United States of America. These laws are created by the federal government. Federal court cases are cases that typically involve a matter that goes against the Constitution, disputes between states, bankruptcy claims involving programs at a federal level, or claims that involve a federal agency. So what makes this case a federal case? This case is considered federal because of the breach in the Constitution. The First Amendment protects freedom of speech, and the 14th Amendment protects against discrimination. Now that we have a clear understanding of what a federal case is and why this case would be considered a federal case, I would like to introduce it. An animal rights activist applied to a job undercover to reveal abuse that was occurring on a dairy farm. The employer had no idea that this was an animal rights activist and that there would be journalism occurring on his property. Once evidence was gathered, it was made public. The animal rights activists had recorded multiple videos and had posted them to the public eye. The dairy farm owners began receiving threats. They received death threats, threats to shut down the business, and protest. So they sued the animal rights activist. Idaho had created laws to protect farmers and to establish some type of privacy for property. But the activists retaliated by claiming they were protected under the First Amendment. So who were these animal rights activists? The activists mostly on the case were ALDF and PETA. PETA is an animal rights activist group. It is a nonprofit group that advocates for people for the ethical treatment of animals. Some say this group can be considered extreme. And ALDF is the Animal Legal Defense Fund. So now that we know that an animal rights activist had gone under investigative journalism, we must understand what investigative journalism is. Investigative journalism gained popularity in the early 1900s when an undercover journalist went to a meat packaging facility and published a novel called The Jungle, which exposed this facility for multiple health violations and unethical services. Reporters deeply investigate a specific topic that the person being investigating wishes to keep a secret. Journalism has always been protected by law under the First Amendment of the Constitution. The information should, however, be credible and true, but it isn't always this way. Investigative is not uncommon for these journalists to go undercover in order to obtain certain information that would not otherwise be open to the general public. So once this animal rights activist was hired as an employee, what exactly did he see? What exactly was on that footage? So I would like to create an introduction to explain what was seen in this footage and what created all these threats against the Idaho dairy farm. There's a variety of abuse seen in the footage released by the animal rights activists. For example, some of the employees were twisting cow tails to forcefully make them painful. They were dragging cows by their necks with chains, beating the cows with sticks and objects, jumping on the cows to try and get them to move, and they were also kicking the cows. The state of Idaho released a set of laws or statutes that would criminalize anyone attempting to sabotage a farmer, and PETA argued that these laws went against the Constitution. What exactly were the statutes that Idaho had put into place? Idaho's interference with agriculture production statute states: A. Is not employed by an agricultural production facility and enters an agricultural facility by force, threat, misrepresentation, or trespassing. This is basic trespassing law. B. Obtains records of an agricultural production facility by force, threat, misinterpretation, or trespass. Very similar to the first one, but it's just different because it is obtaining records as opposed to going onto the property itself. C. Obtains employment with an agricultural facility by force, threat, or misrepresentation with the intent to cause economic or other injury to the facility's operations, livestock, crops, owners, personnel, equipment, buildings, premises, business interests, or customers. Now, this one is very specific, and it is very specific to the case. Has the word misrepresentation is in there. This employee was hired under misrepresentation. He was hired to move some rocks and perform some gardening skills, but instead he was actually a journalist that was undercover, so he would be violating that one. D. Enters an agricultural production facility that is not open to the public and without the facility's owner's express consent or pursuant to judicial process or statutory authorization, makes audio or video recordings of the conduct of an agricultural production facility's operation. Now, this one is also being violated because, as you know, there was video and audio that was recorded on the property and released to the public. So why did Idaho decide to make these laws? Well, they were trying to protect the farmers and the agricultural production, but they're not realizing the harm that it was causing to the animals. So, the counter-argument that ALDF and PETA presented to the course was that the Idaho statutes clearly violate the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and the equal protection guarantees that are protected under the 14th Amendment. So what did the course end up deciding? Well, in 2015, a year after this case was presented, ALDF and PETA won their case, so they were actually in the right. And it was proven that the Idaho statutes did in fact breach the Constitution and was discriminating whistleblowers. Whistleblowers are people that tend to expose things to light. It also violated the 14th Amendment, which is the Equal Protection Clause. So Idaho was forced to take down these statutes and avoid interfering with any type of investigative journalism that was happening towards these farmers, and it protected the animals and the animals' rights. I would like to conclude by saying that we have learned in this class that animals don't have many rights of their own. They're basically considered property, so it is important to protect the rights of these animals when we can. ALDF and PETA are considered to be extremist groups. However, they did a very good job in presenting this case and protecting the First and 14th Amendment in order to expose the audio and visualization of the abuse that was occurring in the behind-the-scenes part of these dairy farms. Without this, we would never know that all these animals were being abused. Like I said, it is important to protect the rights that we have, and it is important to protect the rights that protect the animals. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.